The afternoon sun hovered lazily above the small town of Ijai, painting the mud houses and zinc-roof buildings in a golden haze. Children ran barefoot across the dusty roads, their laughter ringing out like careless music. But for Tunde, life was about to change in a way that would scar his young heart forever. At 12 years old, Tunde had always looked up to his father, Pa Kolawole, as the anchor of their family. A tall, strong man with broad shoulders hardened by years of farm work, Kolawole was respected in the village not because he was rich, but because of his integrity. He often said, "Omo me, riches can disappear, but good name will never wash away." Those words lived in Tunde's young mind, though he barely understood their depth. That morning had begun like any other. Roosters crowed, the smell of akara frying by roadside women drifted through the air, and Tunde's mother, Tunde, stirred a pot of pap inside their small clay-walled kitchen. Tunde had just returned from fetching water at the stream when a group of men burst into the compound, their faces etched with panic. "Ekule-o! Where is Tunde? Where is she?" one of them shouted. His mother came running out, her wrapper tied loosely across her chest. "What is it?" Kalode, the eldest of the men, hesitated, his voice trembling. "It's Kolawole. Something has happened at the farm." By the time they reached the farm, Tunde's world had shattered. His father lay on the ground, his body lifeless, his machete still clutched weakly in his hand. They said he had slumped suddenly while clearing weeds, perhaps from hidden sickness no one knew about. His face, though peaceful, looked strangely distant, as if sleep had stolen him away too soon. Tunde screamed. His young voice echoed through the tall trees, startling birds into flight. He clung to his father's cold hand, shaking it, begging him to rise. "Baba! Baba, please wake up. You promised you will teach me how to plant yam ridges this season. Baba, don't leave me." But Kolawole did not rise. The funeral came quickly, as was the custom in the village. Neighbors filled their compound with mournful wails, the women tying black scarves, the men speaking in low, respectful tones. The local pastor preached about life being a vapor, here today and gone tomorrow. Tunde sat on a wooden bench, staring blankly as men lowered his father's wrapped body into the red earth. He felt as though a part of him was buried too. That night the house was unusually silent. His mother, her eyes swollen from weeping, sat by the kerosene lamp. She held Tunde's hand tightly. "My son," she whispered, her voice breaking, "you must be strong. Your father is gone, and I have nothing but you." But strength was a distant word for a boy who had just lost the man he called his hero. In the days that followed, the reality of poverty pressed heavily on their shoulders. Kolawole had been the breadwinner, the one who tilled the farm, sold cassava at the market, and made sure there was food on the table. With him gone, their small farm could not sustain them. Debts piled up, and whispers from relatives began to grow louder. How will Tunde manage this boy alone? Eventually, her elder brother, Uncle Bamidele, offered to take Tunde in. "He is still young," Bamidele reasoned. "Let him stay with me, Inibadan. At least he can go to school there. You, my sister, you know how hard it will be to train him alone." Tunde's mother resisted at first. She wanted her son near, but reality gnawed at her like a stubborn rat. She sold some yams and petty goods in the market, but it was never enough. Many nights she went to bed hungry so Tunde could eat. One evening, she sat him down under the mango tree in front of their house. "Tunde," she said softly, brushing his hair, "your uncle has agreed to take you with him. He is not a bad man. You will live in Ibadan, and maybe you will find better chances there." Tunde's heart sank. The thought of leaving his mother behind tore at him. "But Mama, I don't want to go. I want to stay with you." Her eyes glistened in the dim light. "If I had enough, my son, I would never let you go. But one day, when you become a man, you will understand." And so, with a small box of clothes and his father's old wristwatch tucked safely inside, Tunde followed Uncle Bamidele into a new chapter of his life, one filled with hardship, lessons, and the fire that would forge his destiny. But as their bus rumbled out of the village the next morning, Tunde looked back through the dusty window. His mother stood by the roadside, waving with trembling hands, her wrapper tied tightly against the cool Harmattan breeze. He pressed his palm against the glass, tears streaming down his face, as the figure of the only parent he had left grew smaller and smaller until it vanished. The journey to Ibadan felt endless to young Tunde. The rattling bus sped along narrow roads, past thick bushes, clusters of roadside traders balancing goods on their heads, and motorcyclists weaving dangerously through traffic. The city loomed ahead, noisy and unfamiliar. To a boy who had never left his small village, Ibadan seemed like another world entirely. Its sprawling markets, endless rows of zinc roofs, and the constant cry of "Gariwa-o, breadwa-o" at every corner overwhelmed him. His uncle Bamidel was a civil servant. Though not rich, he was better off than most in the family. He lived with his wife and 3 children in a modest 2-room flat in a crowded compound at Okeado. The compound was a buzzing microcosm of urban life. Women pounding yam in large mortars, men playing draughts under mango trees, and children chasing one another through narrow passageways. "From today," Uncle Bamidel said sternly as they walked into the compound, "you must learn how to behave yourself. Ibadan is not Ijaye. Here, you must be smart. And remember, you will help your auntie in the house. School is good, but respect comes first." Tunde nodded silently, clutching his small box of clothes. Life in his uncle's house was not easy. He quickly discovered that though he was family, he was also considered an extra mouth to feed. His aunt, Mama Kemi, often reminded him of this. Tunde, you think food grows on trees? If not for your uncle, will I carry another child to train? You better learn to be useful." And so, before the cock crowed each morning, Tunde swept the compound, fetched water from a distant well, and ran errands for his cousins. While his cousins prepared leisurely for school, Tunde rushed, often arriving with dusty shoes and sweat-soaked clothes. At school, things were no kinder. His village accent made him a target for mockery. "Look at Bush Boy," some classmates jeered, but Tunde bore it silently, his mind hardened by his father's words about the value of a good name. He buried himself in his books, often studying late at night under the flickering light of a kerosene lantern after finishing chores. One day, his uncle returned from work holding his report card. Uncle Bamidel muttered, adjusting his reading glasses. "First position again?" Tunde stood nervously, his heart pounding. He did not know if this would bring praise or fresh responsibilities. His uncle's stern face broke into the faintest of smiles. "You are trying, my boy. Keep it up. One day this brain of yours will take you far, but don't forget, you are still under my roof." It was the closest thing to encouragement Tunde had received in months, and he clung to it like a lifeline. Still, survival was a daily battle. There were times he went to bed hungry when food ran out, or when his aunt insisted he had eaten enough even when he hadn't touched a morsel. At other times, his cousins mocked him for wearing patched uniforms and old sandals passed down to him. Yet rather than break him, these experiences shaped him. Deep inside, a quiet fire burned. "One day, I will rise above this. One day, I will not only take care of myself, but also make Mama proud." Years passed, and Tunde grew from a timid boy into a determined teenager. His hunger for education drove him relentlessly. He participated in school debates, mathematics competitions, and essay contests. Teachers noticed his brilliance and dedication, often singling him out as a model student. At night, when the city quieted and only the distant hum of generators filled the air, Tunde sometimes lay awake thinking of his mother back in Ijayi. He imagined her sitting alone in their small hut, struggling to sell cassava at the market. He missed her deeply, and the longing often brought tears to his eyes. But it also fueled his resolve. He could not let her sacrifices be in vain. Uncle Bamidel, though strict, began to notice something different about the boy. Unlike his own children, who often lazed around or complained about chores, Tunde worked hard without protest. He seemed to carry a maturity far beyond his years. One evening, as Tunde washed plates behind the house, his uncle approached him quietly. "Tunde," he said in a softer tone than usual, "life is hard, I know. But if you keep this focus, you will go far. Just don't forget the people who helped you when you had nothing." The words sank deep into Tunde's heart. Though his uncle's household was not easy, Tunde recognized that it had given him shelter and access to better education than his mother alone could have afforded. He promised himself that one day, if fortune smiled on him, he would repay this debt of gratitude. And so, with resilience etched into his character and determination guiding his steps, Tunde continued to press forward, unaware that his journey was only just beginning, that the boy from Ijai was destined to walk paths far beyond the dusty roads of Ibadan. By the time Tunde turned 16, his world had changed in subtle but powerful ways. He was no longer just the boy who swept compounds and fetched water at dawn. He was now the boy teachers pointed to as a shining star in his school. His name began to spread beyond his classroom. That Ijai boy is brilliant. That one will go far. But brilliance alone could not erase the hardships he faced daily. His school fees were a constant worry. Many times he was sent home for owing money, standing helpless by the school gate while his classmates continued with lessons. Each time this happened, Tunde would walk the long distance back to his uncle's office in town, hoping to plead for help. Sometimes Uncle Bamadel would scold him. "Ah, Tunde, every time it's school fees, school fees. Do you think money falls from the sky?" Yet after the grumbling, he would usually pay, muttering under his breath. Tunde knew it was a sacrifice and he never forgot it. At home, his cousins treated him as though his only worth was in the chores he did. They called him houseboy when their parents weren't around. But instead of lashing out, Tunde learned patience. He realized that bitterness would only distract him from the dream burning in his heart, a dream to rise above poverty, to rewrite the story of his family, and to one day take his mother out of suffering. It was in his final year of secondary school that Tunde's dream began to take shape. One evening, a teacher, Mr. Adewale, noticed him still in the classroom long after others had gone home. Tunde sat at a desk, scribbling solutions to complex math problems by the dim light of a small rechargeable lamp he had borrowed. "You again, Tunde?" the teacher said, smiling. "Do you ever rest?" Tunde looked up shyly. "Sir, I want to be ready for WAEC. If I pass well, maybe I can get a scholarship." Mr. Adewale studied him thoughtfully. "You remind me of myself when I was your age. You know what? There are competitions and scholarship exams you can apply for. Work hard, and you might just catch the eye of people who can help you." Those words were like fuel poured on fire. From that night on, Tunde doubled his efforts. He read every book he could lay his hands on, sometimes borrowing old textbooks from neighbors. He attended free seminars and listened attentively whenever educated visitors spoke in church. One day, he stumbled on a magazine in a roadside shop. The cover showed a Nigerian man in a suit shaking hands with the American president. The headline read, "From Humble Beginnings to the White House, the story of a Nigerian diplomat." Tunde stood frozen, staring at the image. So it is possible, he thought. Someone from here can walk with world leaders. That night, he dreamed of airplanes, conferences, and a life far beyond Ibadan. When WAEC results were released, Tunde had one of the best scores in the state. His name was announced at school assembly, and students clapped while teachers nodded proudly. The card the British professor gave him remained tucked in Tunde's wallet like a sacred charm. Each time he felt doubt creeping in, he would pull it out, read the name again, and remind himself, this could be the bridge to the life I've been dreaming about. But dreaming was not enough. To study abroad, he needed more than ambition. He needed funding, documents, and above all, faith. The scholarship from the oil company had carried him through his undergraduate years, but postgraduate studies were another mountain entirely. For months, Tunde buried himself in research. He spent hours in the university library, poring over scholarship databases, drafting essays, and practicing for interviews. His friends often found him bent over a rickety table, eyes tired but burning with determination. "Ah, Tunde, you and books," one of them joked. "Don't you ever rest?" He smiled faintly. "Rest will come later. Right now, I have to build my tomorrow." At the same time, he faced pressure from home. His mother's health had begun to decline. Years of hard labor and poverty had taken their toll. Whenever he called, she tried to sound cheerful, but her voice carried a weariness he could not ignore. "My son," she said one evening over the crackling phone line, "don't worry about me. Just focus on your studies. One day you will make me proud." Those words cut deep. He wanted more than anything to lift her out of suffering while she was still alive. Months later, an email popped up on his old laptop screen. His heart pounded as he clicked it open. Dear Mr. Kolawol, we are pleased to offer you admission to pursue a master's degree in international economics at the University of Birmingham. In recognition of your outstanding academic record and leadership potential, you have been awarded a full scholarship, including tuition and living expenses. Tunde froze. For a moment, he thought it was a mistake. Then slowly the words sank in. His dream had come true. He screamed, startling his roommates. Tears ran down his face as he knelt beside his bed, whispering, "Thank you, Lord. Thank you." When he told his uncle, Bamadal raised his eyebrows in astonishment. So this small boy from Ijaye is now going abroad? Wonders shall never end. Yet beneath his gruff tone, there was pride. His aunt shook her head, half jealous, half impressed. But Tunde knew in his heart that the journey was his alone to walk. The day of his departure was surreal. Standing at Murtala Muhammad International Airport, dressed in his best shirt and a second-hand suit bought from Tejosho Market, he clutched his passport and ticket tightly. He had never been on a plane before. As he hugged his mother goodbye, tears streamed down her face. "My son," she whispered, "may God guide you." "Don't forget where you come from," he promised, though his throat was too tight to say much more. When the plane finally lifted off the ground, Tunde pressed his face against the window. Lagos shrank beneath him, the roofs, the traffic, the bustling streets. Then clouds surrounded the plane, and Nigeria disappeared from sight. His heart swelled. This is it. This is the beginning of a new life. Birmingham was cold, gray, and utterly different from Ibadan. The first time he stepped out into the frosty air, he shivered uncontrollably, his breath forming white clouds. Everything felt foreign, the accents, the food, the fast trains. But amid the strangeness, Tunde felt alive. He threw himself into his studies, determined to prove himself. His professors quickly noticed his discipline and sharp mind. Classmates admired his insight during debates. Opportunities opened. Conferences, internships, even travel to other countries in Europe. For the first time, Tunde boarded trains across borders, stood before historic landmarks, and walked streets he had only read about in books. Paris, Rome, Berlin, each city left him awestruck. He often thought back to the barefoot boy in Ijaye chasing goats through dusty roads. The contrast humbled him. During his final year of postgraduate study, Tunde interned with a multinational investment firm. His sharp analysis impressed the executives, and when he graduated, they offered him a position. The salary was more than anything he had ever imagined. With his first paycheck, he wired money home. His mother cried when she saw the amount. His uncle, surprised, nodded quietly. This boy has truly done well. But Tunde was not done. He worked tirelessly, climbing the corporate ladder, taking certifications, and networking widely. Within a few years, he was traveling regularly for business: New York, Tokyo, Dubai. Each trip expanded his vision. One evening, while gazing at the city lights from a skyscraper in London, he whispered to himself, "I will not only make it, I will build something lasting. I will lift others the way I once longed to be lifted." The boy from Ijai had finally broken through, but destiny still had twists waiting for him. Moments of triumph and moments of pain that even his success could not shield him from. Success, once a distant dream, now sat on Tunde's shoulders like a well-fitted suit. In just a few years of working abroad, he had become one of the youngest rising executives in his company. His ideas were bold, his analyses sharp, and his work ethic unmatched. Colleagues marveled at the young Nigerian who never seemed to tire, who spoke with both confidence and humility. With every new promotion came greater responsibility and greater reward. His salary swelled, bonuses rolled in, and he began to invest wisely. He bought shares, dabbled in real estate, and soon launched his own consulting firm. That decision proved pivotal. Within 3 years, his company was advising governments and multinational corporations across Europe and Africa. A man of the world, Tunde traveled constantly. He attended conferences in Geneva, sealed deals in Dubai, and spoke at forums in Washington, D.C. He walked the streets of New York, marveled at the lights of Times Square, and gazed at the ancient wonders of Egypt. Each trip felt like a step into the destiny he had once whispered about under the Ibadan night sky. He became known as a man of excellence, respected in boardrooms and celebrated at international events. Journalists wrote about him. From village boy to global visionary, his story inspired many, but deep inside, Tunde remained the same boy who once fetched water before dawn and studied by kerosene lamp. Yet with each success, his heart always drifted back to Nigeria, back to his mother in Ijeim, and back to his uncle in Ibadan. Remembering his uncle one December, after years of being away, Tunde returned home. His arrival caused a stir. He stepped out of the airport in Lagos wearing a tailored suit, pulling a sleek leather suitcase, while his driver waited beside a black SUV. People turned to stare, but Tunde did not drive straight to a hotel. His first stop was Ibadan, Uncle Bamidel's house. The compound looked smaller than he remembered. The paint faded, the zinc roof rusted in places. Children still played in the passageways. Women still pounded yam, but everything seemed older. When his uncle came out, now gray-haired and slightly stooped, Tunde bowed respectfully. "Uncle," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I have come to say thank you." Bamidel studied him for a moment, surprise written all over his face. "Tunde? Is this really you? You look like those big men on TV now." They laughed, but soon Tunde grew serious. He handed his uncle an envelope. Inside was a check worth more than his uncle had earned in years. "Uncle, I can never forget what you did for me. You gave me shelter. You gave me education, even when it was hard. Please accept this, not as payment, because I can never repay you, but as a token of gratitude." Bamidel's eyes grew misty. He cleared his throat, trying to hide his emotions. "Ah, Tunde, you did not need to do this. You have made me proud already." But Tunde insisted, and in the months that followed, he went further. He renovated his uncle's house, sponsored his cousins through school, and ensured the family lived comfortably. In his heart, he felt peace. He had kept his promise to never forget those who helped him when he had nothing. Lifting his mother. If compensating his uncle brought him peace, helping his mother brought him joy. He built her a fine house in Ijaye with tiled floors, borehole water, and a solar inverter system that kept lights on even when others sat in darkness. For the first time in her life, she lived without the constant worry of poverty. Each time he visited, villagers gathered at the gate, whispering in awe, "See how far Mama Tunde's son has gone." They looked at her with newfound respect, and she smiled through tears, her heart swelling with pride. At night, she often held Tunde's hand and whispered, "My son, you have done well. Your father will be smiling in his grave giving back." But Tunde's vision extended beyond family. He remembered the countless children back home who, like him, were brilliant but trapped by poverty. He founded a scholarship foundation, sponsoring hundreds of students across Nigeria. He built libraries, provided school supplies, and even opened a small community center in Ijaye. Whenever he stood before the students, he told his story, the boy who once had nothing but a dream, and in their eager faces he saw reflections of himself. Yet the weight of life. Despite his wealth, despite his global influence, Tunde carried one silent fear, his mother's health. Though she now lived in comfort, age and years of struggle had left her frail. He flew her abroad for medical checkups, hired nurses, and provided the best care. But deep down, he knew time was a river no man could stop. Each success he celebrated was shadowed by a single prayer. "Lord, let my mother live long enough to enjoy the fruit of her labor." The year was bright for Tunde. His business had expanded into Africa, and he was being courted by governments to consult on economic policies. Newspapers celebrated him as one of the youngest Nigerian billionaires shaping global conversations. Yet behind the headlines, his heart carried a secret heaviness. His mother's health was declining faster than he could accept. It began with small things. She tired easily, complained of aches, and sometimes forgot details during their long phone calls. Tunde flew her to London for medical checkups. The doctors were kind but honest. Her body was weakening, her heart fragile from years of struggle and age. Tunde threw money at the problem. Specialists, medications, nutritionists, nurses. He even hired someone to live with her in the new house he had built in Ijaye. But no amount of money could roll back time. One evening, while seated at a gala in Dubai surrounded by business leaders, his phone buzzed. He stepped outside to take the call. It was his mother. "My son," her voice was faint but warm. "I saw you on TV today. They said you were in America last week and now in Dubai. Ah, God has truly lifted you. I am proud." Tunde's throat tightened. "Mama, it is because of your prayers. You are my strength. Please stay strong for me. I want you to enjoy this life fully." She chuckled softly. "I have enjoyed, my son, more than I ever dreamed. Don't worry about me." Her words unsettled him. They sounded like farewell. It was a rainy afternoon in London when the call came. Tunde had just stepped out of a board meeting when his phone rang. It was his uncle's number. "Hello, uncle." Silence. Then a broken voice. "Tunde, your mother? She has gone." The world spun. The phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the pavement. For a moment he could not breathe. Passers-by glanced at him, concerned, but he heard nothing. His knees buckled, and he sank against a wall, whispering over and over, "No, no, no." He booked the earliest flight home, but it was too late. His mother's body lay in the small sitting room of the house he had built for her, surrounded by weeping relatives and neighbors. She looked peaceful, almost as if asleep, but to Tunde it felt like the cruelest joke of fate. The one person he wanted most to share his success with was gone. He wept uncontrollably, holding her cold hand, whispering, "Mama, I made it. I did everything for you. Why didn't you wait? Why now?" But the silence of death gave no answers. Her burial was the largest Ijai had ever seen. Cars lined the dusty roads. Guests poured in from Lagos, Abuja, even abroad. Tunde spared no expense. White canopies dotted the compound. Choirs sang, and dignitaries gave speeches about the woman who had raised a global figure. Villagers whispered in awe, "See what her son has become." Truly, God bless his patience. Yet for Tunde, the grandeur meant nothing. As the coffin was lowered into the red earth, he felt as though part of his soul had been buried with her. His chest ached with regret, not because he hadn't cared for her, but because wealth had come too late to give her long years of rest. In the weeks that followed, Tunde traveled the world as usual, but the sparkle had dulled. Hotel suites, business-class flights, and standing ovations at conferences all felt empty. At night, alone in luxurious rooms, he would hear her voice in his mind, urging him to pray, reminding him to stay humble, calling him "Oko mi," my son. Slowly, grief reshaped him. He realized that wealth, no matter how vast, could not buy time. He began to live differently, less for the applause of the world, more for the lives he could touch. He expanded his foundation, funding hospitals, women's empowerment programs, and rural schools. In every act of charity, he saw his mother's face. It became his way of keeping her alive, of honoring the woman who had believed in him when the world saw nothing. On the anniversary of her death, Tunde returned quietly to Ije. He stood by her grave under the shade of an iroko tree, dressed simply in a white kaftan. Dropping flowers on the mound of earth, he whispered, "Mama, I travel the world. I dine with presidents. I sleep in palaces. But none of it matters without you. Still, I will keep making you proud. Every life I touch, every child I help, it is your name I carry with me. Rest well." The wind rustled the trees, and for a brief moment, he felt a strange calm, as though she was smiling down on him. And so the boy from Ijaya, once barefoot and broken, stood tall as a man the world celebrated. Yet in his heart, he remained simply Mama's son, a son determined to turn grief into legacy, sorrow into service, and success into something bigger than himself.